Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Owl Pod, the official podcast of Temple Athletics. I'm your host, Kevin Copp, and my guest today is Temple rowing head coach Rebecca Grzybowski. Rebecca is a graduate of Holy Cross, where she was a two-time captain and first-team All-New England selection in 2002. Following her time as a collegiate rower, she had an outstanding career, which included a gold medal at the 2002 U.S. National Championships in the lightweight pair, gold medals at the head of the Charles and head of the Schuylkill, a gold medal in the lightweight quad at the U.S. Elite National Championships. She helped the U.S. women's lightweight quad to a bronze medal at the World Rowing Championships in Linz, Austria, and a fourth-place finish at the U.S. Olympic Team Trials in the lightweight double in 2008. Since that time, Rebecca has had an outstanding coaching career as well, which began at her alma mater, Holy Cross, and continued for 2 seasons at Bucknell before joining the Temple program as an assistant coach in 2011 and being promoted to the head coach after just 1 season in 2012, where she has been ever since. In the intervening 14 seasons, Rebecca has coached Temple to 21 conference medals, 4 of which have been gold, while also taking home the 2019 Dad Vale team title. Here is Rebecca Grzybowski, Temple women's rowing head coach, after this quick word from our Alpod sponsors.
And we're back with the action. Coke Zero Sugar might be the best Coke ever.
That's right, Jim. With an irresistible taste and zero sugar, Coke Zero Sugar is a must-try for any sports fan. So make sure you... Wait, Jim, I didn't mean try it right now. We're still on the air.
Best Coke ever? Take a taste, Jen.
Really?
No, not right now, Jen. We got a game to call.
Well, I think rowing is really interesting, and it was actually kind of perfect timing, unintentionally. Kathleen Stengel was our last guest. So you talk about she was great.
She's wonderful.
You talk about all the different ways into rowing. She represents one end of the spectrum. I mean, truly coming in as a novice, and that's such an important part of rowing culture. I'm just assuming from your background that is not your case. So how do you come into the sport?
You know what's funny, Kevin, I came in the exact same way Kathleen did.
Is that so?
Also a novice.
I'm shocked,
I know.
given the accolades.
That's
and
the sport of rowing that makes it so cool, is that you really can start this sport. It's probably the only sport, Division I, elite level, Olympic level, where you can start as a 18-year-old freshman in college and take it all the way to the Olympic podium if you wanted to.
It is amazing.
It's really wild.
Because gymnastics is exactly the opposite. It's like once you come to college, that's it. You're
you
there
didn't start at age 4, you're out.
Correct. You're there to have fun. You're coasting. You've done 2 Olympic cycles already. You're just putting your feet up now. Yeah, exactly. This is like your retirement community. So that is wild.
So
you did come in as a novice.
I did. I walked on.
Wow.
So I was a runner, and I was always an athlete.
I was going to say, you have to have some background.
Yeah.
Right? So where did sports start for you?
So it's funny. I, like a lot of kids, soccer, which I remember hating. I was always on defense, like picking at daisies, and all the action was the other end of the field. And I hated just not moving. So soccer turned into, basketball, and dabbled in tennis briefly, and then kind of found running. My dad was a runner, just more recreationally, so I'd run with him. And so I actually got cut from my high school basketball team, didn't make it, which led me to cross country and indoor-outdoor track. So I was just a runner through college, high school. Just loved being on a team, a lot of leadership roles and some success, but I wasn't like a great runner. So then my college, and I was on the cusp of women's rowing really exploding at the high school level. Now it's everywhere. But when I was
growing up in New England,
New England, which is funny, but rowing, even that's like the 90s, like rowing was very prep school, and that was kind of it. And now it's a lot more accessible, which is wonderful to see. But when I was growing up, it wasn't that. So I was a runner in high school, and then I kind of I didn't get recruited to run. I picked my school. It was kind of like, I'll pick a school for, where I want to go. And that's kind of it, which is funny because that's what we tell our athletes to do. Like, pick a school that you're going to love regardless of the sport piece. And I was like, I'll find a way to get active when I'm there. I'll find a team. I was a runner, so I remember picking my school and then going up in the summer for like an open house or something. And I had a meeting with the cross country coach. And I tell this story, I've told it so many times. All of my former rowers are like, yeah, we know. So I met with a cross country coach, this guy named Jim Kavanaugh. He's wonderful. And he was like, yeah, we would love to have you. We have a big roster. We're always looking for good teammates. Like, I was not running D1 times, but he was like, sure, you want to work hard? You want to be here? Like any coach. Like, I love somebody who wants to be here and show up every day with good effort and great energy. And so it was like, great. So I left his office in the summer and I was like, I'm going to be a runner in college. Like, this is going to be awesome. And I get home, and this is like, early interwebs. And so I get online and I start, learning more about running at the next level. And I realized they run in those little like booty hugger shorts. And I was like, oh, hell no. Like, I'm not even kidding. That was the reason I was like, I need to find another sport. I don't know if I can commit to that, And then my pediatrician, of all people, was also a rower, and his kids rowed. And I was 5'8" in high school, and I'm still 5'8", but back in high school, 5'8" is pretty tall when you're 15, 16 years old. And so he was like, you'd make a good rower. Like, you've got an aerobic base. And I was like, that's it. That's I knew nothing else about it. I was like, that's it. And then you find out you compete in a full spandex bodysuit. I was gonna say, yeah. I don't know if that's better or worse, but that was the path, truly. And I just kind of like found my people. So I got to college looking. I mean, every fall, we do Temple Fest, and we're trying to recruit walk-on athletes. We're like, you look athletic, you should join the rowing team. People are like, what are you're crazy. But I went to college looking for the rowing team. Like, I was searching for the team. I was like, I want to walk onto the team. And so I was looking for the signs and went to the sign up and went to the first practice. And from the very first practice, we had tanks because we were indoor in New England. So we had some indoor space. So from the first row, we just were sitting in the tanks, just like blades in and blades out together. And it's one of those things that like, it probably lasted 5 minutes, but it's like so just ingrained where I was like, this is my sport. Like, I just loved the way blades were just dropping into the water all together. And then we got on the water, and it just got even better. And turns out I was pretty good at it. So I just kind of kept doing the next thing that was in front of me. And ended up rowing 4 years. And then my college coach was really instrumental in that next step, which was continuing to train after college.
Yeah, so this is at Holy Cross.
Mm-hmm.
So what is that progression like? Because obviously I imagine, what's the number of people that came into that team as novices?
A lot. Especially back then. It was like primarily novices.
So it has to be a large number. And I'm assuming, even probably by the time you get out on the river for the first time, that number has already whittled itself down and say, whoa, this is not nearly as much fun as, or it's just not matching what the experience was. So not just to obviously make it as a novice rower, but to work your way up the way you did, through the kind of rungs on the ladder, so to speak, in that team. Just what was that process like for you?
Yeah, I think just, again, you keep showing up and enjoying the process of learning and pushing and being better. And I think being naturally kind of good at it helps because you're like seeing the progress. But I just loved that it was a sport where you put in the work and you watch yourself get better. And if you want to get better, you put in more work and you watch it, you get that back. And so that felt very rewarding and encouraging. And so I just kept, again, doing the next thing. And by the end of my freshman year, I found myself in the 2V as a novice, and we had some like championship racing, and I was one of 3 novices that they had pulled up. So I raced in the 2V and medaled at New England's. And so that was, again, a very encouraging year, and met a lot of the varsity along the way, and they were excited that we were excited. And so it just became a space where it was fun to work hard and accomplish things together. And so then it turned into, pulling up to varsity and then just 3 more years there.
So at what point, if I'm having this timeline correct, you graduate and stay on at Holy Cross, you go immediately into coaching, but also while you're doing that, you're obviously pursuing some larger, national, international level competition. So how was all of this? At what point did you have the sense that, hey, not just am I a very good college rower, but there may be something in this for me beyond?
A lot of it kind of came down to erg scores. Initially, it was just kind of like the initial, like, oh, my engine is pretty good. And then it kind of became a conversation with my college coach where he was like, there's a level after this. And I was like, there is? Like, I didn't even know. And so a lot of it was having someone see something, recognize something in me that I didn't know was there, and kind of like pull it out and lay the path in front of me and say, if you want to do this, here's how you do it. You could be good. And so he kind of helped me navigate that, where at the time, the system has changed a lot, but it used to be that you would submit your erg scores monthly to the United States national team, and they would post a ranking. And so that, again, was encouraging, where you'd submit a score, and then a couple weeks later, they would post it and be like, here are all the 6Ks. And I would be like, oh, I'm like I'm competitive. And I wasn't at the top, but I wasn't at the bottom. And so that became encouraging. And I was like, let's just kind of see how far it could go. And so then I graduated truly with no idea what I wanted to do. Didn't even really consider coaching as a profession, but I knew I wanted to keep rowing. And so my college coach encouraged me to stick around. I trained with a teammate who was going to be a senior the following. She was a year behind me. We rowed a pair, and he just, again, sort of exposure to what's next. There's club level, U.S. Rowing Club Nationals. So we raced there and we did well. And then we went to Canadian Henley and did really well there. And then there was a U.S. Rowing Trials that we went to, and we came in second. So a lot of that first year was just kind of like like learning what else was out there and how to manage it. And seeing that I was excited about it, and I, saw the work, but it was just exposure, I think, and I credit him a lot with helping me see that there was more out there.
Just a small rowing nerdy technical question. What was the difference when you're rowing a pair? For folks that are not familiar in college, you have, mostly eights. There are some fours, but basically you're talking about, 8 boats. And so now to go to two, what was just the technical difference in that?
I think just you have almost more ownership, right? Because there's no coxswain, there's just two of you, and you've got to communicate and figure it out. And thankfully I had a great teammate, my friend Melissa, and we just kind of I think truly approached it with just like, let's just have fun. Like, we got in, it worked, and so now it's kind of like, let's just see what we can do. And every time we raced, we had a good time, and we did well, and we won some things. And so it just like kept kind of just, again, momentum and the excitement of it. But I truly think we came in with a sort of learner mentality of like, this is new for both of us. There's almost no expectation because it's new. And then we kind of gained some legs from there.
So where does all of it kind of end up for you? Obviously, the coaching sounded like it started as more of an ends to a mean, where you could keep staying in this training environment, and obviously you got to make some money and do something post-college, but you go through, you look at the list of races and regattas that we've talked about. You're competing at the highest possible level. Were there Olympic aspirations in there? Like, how did all of that kind of work itself out in terms of the kind of postgraduate?
I think I was never like, I'm going to try to make the Olympic team. I kind of, again, it always felt like it was what's the next thing, and someone would open a door and you'd be like, oh, I could go through there and see what's beyond that, like what's beyond door number one.
That's probably the best way to do it.
Yeah, it felt, it didn't, I don't know that I didn't, it's not that I didn't want to, it's just I didn't even really see the path. I think that's what coaching is about, kind of like laying it out there and helping, setting someone on that path, and then be like, what you choose to do with this is up to you. And so I remember, the coaching piece felt like that was the support to allow me to stay in Worcester, have a lot of support, have access to coaches and teammates and training spaces. And so I was kind of in that routine already. So a lot of that didn't change. I just flipped to the other side of the megaphone. That took a little adjusting. And then kept training so I was learning how to coach and learning how to train at the elite level, because there's a next level up. Thankfully, I had a training partner who had trained in Boston, who was in Worcester for med school, and so we would train together. So again, it's just like linking up with people who are just almost like one step ahead, and I would kind of tag along and be like, oh, okay, this is fun. And then gradually you just get better and better. And so it got to the point where I couldn't keep training alone in Worcester, Massachusetts. I needed to go where there was more elite level rowing, which was Philadelphia. And so I remember, again, you have like those pivotal times where I was like, I love this sport. I'm just sitting in a tank doing nothing. And I was like, this is my sport. And I remember sitting on the shores of Worcester on Quincy, where I learned how to row, Lake Quinsigamon. And I was like crying because I knew that I needed to leave, but I'd spent 6 years at Holy Cross, and I was kind of like, I don't even know if I can do this. I don't know anyone in Philadelphia. I don't know how this whole system works. And I remember my college coach being like, you can always come back if it doesn't work out. And I was like, huh. Oh, you're right. And that was like just
You never feel that way in your 20s, though.
No,
it's like
everything
is like, this is my life.
What if it's wrong? And so that was like the permission almost to be like, oh, you're right. If it doesn't work, I have a group of people that will take care, that support me and would welcome me back if it didn't work out, and I would get on another path and figure it out. And so it was like permission granted to be like, okay, I'm going to try this thing. And I had the same conversation with my parents, and they were like, well, what are your goals? And I was like, I don't know. I just want to see how far I can go. So that's kind of how it always felt like, not like I need to accomplish this, but I want to see how far I can take it. And that I thankfully had a lot of people that supported that endeavor.
But you had no connection to the Philadelphia area.
No.
Had you been down here? Obviously, in the course of rowing,
I had raced head of the school as a college athlete, and I had a lot of friends who grew up and rowed in Philly on the men's team. There was a big Roman Catholic to Holy Cross connection, so I had some friends in the area. But there was a assistant coach at Holy Cross whose mom lived out in Bluebell, and she was like, oh, I was going to come down for the summer and just see how it goes. So they had summer rowing on Boathouse Row, and she's like, oh, you could stay with my mom. And I was like, she's outside Philly. And I was like, great.
Yeah, she's outside.
She's outside Philly. I had no idea.
Yeah,
so I lived with her, met some friends. I drove down with my single strap to the roof of my car, and I remember calling the coach as I was getting there, like, what do I do? And met some friends who lived actually in Narber, so much closer than Bluebell. So I kind of just like couch surfed and did the rode in the summer and had a really great time, and just kind of learned the Philadelphia Boathouse Row community and just established some roots there. And then I think I went back to Holy Cross maybe for another year and then moved back down here full time. So it was a summer of exploration and then a full-time move about a year later.
You always hear about, and again, having grown up here, went to school at Upper Marion, and we were lucky enough to have a rowing team and a regatta, and we were out on the Schuylkill. So, we were lucky to have this exposure to it, and that was always, again, as a broadcaster, that was a highlight. Where else can you go and you can actually call rowing? So that was really cool. It was a really neat thing. I really treasured that experience.
Yeah.
You always hear about the Philadelphia rowing culture, but you're coming into it truly and, because of rowing is what brought you here. Just what are you able to, how would you describe what it is? Because, I don't know, you grow up here, you know what the Dad Vales are, you see the boats out on the Schuylkill, you know about Boathouse Row, but what was it, in terms of like a practical sense of actually being able to come here and pursue what you wanted to pursue in the sport of rowing? What is it about Philadelphia? And obviously it's kept you here for 2 decades as well.
Forever. Been here more than anywhere else. It's really unique. I think that's what I think rowing in Philadelphia is so special, unlike anywhere. And I've rowed a lot of places and a lot of, rowing towns, quote unquote, but Philly's really unique. I think because it's so condensed, the rowing is so between Boathouse Row and then obviously where we are just a little bit further up the river, but there's such a small footprint of rowers, so it creates this community, whereas, there's other cities where you have a lot of rowing or an understanding of rowing, but it's a little bit more spaced out, so you don't get that same community feel, and it really feels like once you're in, people take care of you. I've rowed on 3 different clubs on Boathouse Row, and no one was like, oh, I can't believe you're leaving. It's kind of like, that's what you need. That's the next step in your journey, and that's where you have to go to be with people and coaches and get the access that you need to go where you're trying to go. So it always felt like people understood that and were supportive. And, I stayed with friends who weren't charging me rent. I stayed with friends. And then you get connected with someone who's like, I'll get you an apartment. And because you're a rower and I'm a rower, we'll give you a deal. And then, and everybody just kind of looks out for each other. And it's that's what I think makes it really special. And it even happens on the water. I think there's just a respect for people who are chasing a dream. And if you've done it, then you turn around and you pull the next person in. We've hosted people at our house who are like, I'm coming down for summer, I'm coming down to get ready for trials, and you just open up a guest room and you're like, I'll help. You're a rower, I'm a rower, we'll help you out. So there's a really cool community there.
That's really nice. It's one of those things. It's like it's almost this kind of ethereal, metaphysical thing, and I just wanted to see
Very
from
special.
a practical side of how it actually shows up, which is great. I think one of the through lines that you can hear as you've talked about kind of all of these different experiences at every stage. I don't know if it's luck or just you find it, but you've had great coaching. It sounds like the way that you were coached, the people that you had in that role in your life were really, really good. And at what point, I guess, did it start to shift in your mind? Obviously, you're not going to pursue rowing, as a professional career.
Doesn't pay anything
right.
There's that.
Yeah, there's some practical limitations on it.
Yeah.
So at what point do you start to shift into, hey, maybe I can pay some of this forward, from a coaching perspective? Did that become kind of the sole or the primary focus?
The main motivator. It's, again, and it's funny to talk about it out loud because I don't know that I've recognized it, but it felt also sort of the same way my rowing career was of I remember getting in a coaching launch at Holy Cross for the first time and almost learning how to drive. It's like that apprenticeship model where there was no lesson. It was okay, here, turn it on, pull start the engine and go. And here's your megaphone. I was like, wait, what do I say?
Right.
And my college coach at the time, Patrick, was like, you'll figure it out. And I was like, I've always been on the receiving end. I've been in the boat. I don't know what it looks like or what to tell you. So there was just this sort of let's figure it out.
Yeah.
And I think I always leaned on the connection piece of just trying to kind of figure out. I do remember that it never felt, even at that first paid coaching job out of college, it never felt like a job. The hours are ridiculous.
Sure.
You're working all weekend and then you get up on Monday and you do it again and you're early and late and all this stuff, but it never felt like a job. And I had friends right out of college that went and worked in accounting firms or they, and they were, were getting bigger paychecks than I was, that's for sure. But they had a different style of life and a different approach to it. And I remember talking with a friend, even 10 years later, they were talking about their job. We were in visiting friends and talking about work, and someone's like, well, the only one really here that loves their job is Rebecca. And I was like, oh, I guess I do. It's just always kind of been part of it. You don't get into coaching if you don't enjoy it. Otherwise,
that's how they get it. That's how they get all of us working in college athletics. I know.
You're like, what am I doing this for? Well, there's something that keeps me coming back. Yeah.
And then, so with the next step, so obviously, as we talked about, you started at Holy Cross, you come down to Philadelphia. Is the first then coaching post that Bucknell?
Yes.
That? Okay.
Yeah. So I rode in Philly and made some incredible friends and raced with the national team and won a medal. And then, but I always knew, again, back to my time at Holy Cross, I always knew that once my own, because you have a finite window of, like, to your point,
Like
I'm not going to be
any athletic pursuit,
45 and on the national team. It's just not going to happen. And so, so I wanted, but I knew I wanted to give it a full effort. And so I did that and thankfully accomplished a lot and met a lot of people along the way. And, you know, was fortunate enough to race for the U.S. at Worlds and medal. But I always knew that when that was done, that I would get back into coaching. Like that felt like the next, like I wanted to get back to it. And so, I was like, you know, it made the transition out of elite level rowing where that's my priority is me. It made it a little easier knowing that I was still going to be in rowing. It wasn't the end of rowing. It was just a shift in where I was in the rowing.
Yeah. 2 years at Bucknell then, is that right?
Yes, a year as the assistant with the open weights, and then I was the head lightweight coach, which was essentially an assistant coach. We kind of ran the lightweights as a separate squad, so I had some good success there.
And then you get the opportunity to come back to Philadelphia. I imagine had to be somewhat appealing. No disrespect to Lewisburg, but you know,
it was a wonderful time. Again, also met some incredible people that I'm still very close with, and I feel very fortunate. But yes, the goal was always like at that point I had a long-term relationship from Philly to Lewisburg, so you can only do that drive so many times.
Yeah.
And so getting back to Philly was definitely the goal. Ultimately, thankfully, there's a lot of rowing opportunity in Philly, so that was easier.
I imagine, and it was only 1 year as an assistant before you go right. I mean, you jump. I mean, that's a fairly
a big jump,
fairly meteoric rise. I mean, you have you dabble at Holy Cross, you come in 2 years at Bucknell, 1 year as an assistant, and here you go.
Yeah.
And again, for folks that are not intimately familiar with how the sport works and the construction of the roster, outside of football, it is the largest single roster that any coach is going to manage here at Temple or anywhere.
Yes.
It's the second largest sport that there is. And so that's a big portfolio all of a sudden. You're fairly young in your coaching career, sure, to be handed, you know, was there kind of, what was that learning curve, I guess?
Yeah, I'm really great. So full disclosure, I applied for the head coaching job from Bucknell to Temple and got offered the assistant job instead. I didn't get the head coaching job my first round at Temple and got offered the job as the assistant. And I'm glad that I did, truly, because it allowed me to, as an assistant coach, it's a different role, right? It's a lot more athlete facing in a different kind of way.
Sure.
It's a bit more supportive and less big, the buck stops here.
Yeah.
You know, big chair decisions. And so it allowed me to really connect with athletes, to learn Temple as an institution, to have some connections to, you know, staff and administrators and people that were going to be helpful. But I think most importantly was connecting with the athletes and building trust and building relationships so that when that transition happened, which happened right before school started, it was like late August, like, hey, everyone thinks this, and actually this is our new head coach. And so there was a lot of trust there and a lot of enthusiasm for that I don't know would have necessarily been there if I had just come right in. I also don't know that I would have been that ready. You know, like you're bumbling around trying to figure it out and you don't know your athletes. So I at least knew the athletes. I knew the institution. I knew what I was getting into, and the desire to be competitive that was coming from the athletes. I was like, we can figure everything else out together. Like, I believe in them and they believe in me, and we're going to figure that out. The rest of it is, you know, we'll figure it out together. And so there's a lot of grace given, I think, to me because they knew I cared.
All right, well, one of our recurring themes that just seems to pop up in a lot of these conversations, and I think you're in a particular position to address some of them, because, I mean, 2012, right, as a head coach to now 2026, I mean, is an eternity in college athletics. And, you know, I don't,
Kevin.
Not, sorry.
Just kidding.
You're
right.
Trying to find a nicer way to say
You're
it.
not wrong.
You're not old, but, there have been so many changes. So many changes here at Temple and so many changes in college athletics. Let's take Temple first. Sure. I think I don't need to tell you there's probably, 3 or 4 people on the staff that predate you here. Like, if you were doing longest tenured employees, there's not a lot.
I've got a portfolio to prove it somewhere. But,
you know, but
you're right.
It's just and having started here, I interned for a summer in 07, and I came back full time in 15.
Okay.
Which puts me at the. I think
Welcome.
of myself as
Double digits.
young, and I'm like, here I am. There's not many people that were here prior to 15. Certainly not prior to 07. So, I mean, I've seen a lot of changes. I'm just wondering from your perspective as a head coach, obviously I think the boathouse being in the middle of that is probably the, the biggest physical manifestation of, from where you were before to where you are now. But, just, from that standpoint, what are things that are different now as we're sitting here in 2026?
A couple different administrations.
When you started,
I think, well, it's funny, you talk about me taking over as a relatively brand new head coach, like first head coaching job, and I was the only full-time coach on staff. Like, I don't think people realize what it was. So it was me and a very part-time, then again, it was me hiring what was me the year before, a very part-time assistant who was in a full-time grad program somewhere else and was truly just here at practice to help me cover practice. And she was wonderful. We're still very good friends. But we helped each other, and a grad assistant. And that was it. So to go from one full-time staff member, I rode out of a tent, a very hodgepodge fleet of boats. And now we're at a point where we have 4 full-time staffers, 2 coaching staff, me, 3 full-time assistant coaches, or an associate head coach, 2 assistant coaches, 2 grad externs, multiple support staff in terms of even the Resnick Center and the athletic training center and the weight room. So, and mental health, there's just been so many additional resources and support that just keep getting layered up and layered up and layered up, from facilities to external and internal support and, and scholarships and things like that, we keep getting new layers of support. I think that is the part that, you put, again, like I said at the beginning, you put in the work and you see the results. So you just keep showing up and keep putting in the work, and then things keep happening. So
yeah, I mean, you wouldn't know it to look at it and to look at the results, but I mean, it's much more going from really where a Division III program in terms of its staffing and resources to a Division I varsity level it's just, and I mean no disrespect to the administrations or anyone but it's just
you do the best you can with what you got, and I think that's what everybody was doing before. And then I think that's part of hiring people that really care about a place like Temple or the athletic department or a program. You're willing to kind of look around and say, okay, what do we really need and how do I put that in place? And sometimes you got to make hard decisions. You'd be like, I'd like all 3 things, but I can only pick one right now. And so being able to be in a position to advocate for the team and what we needed for the athletes on the team, to have administrators that took it seriously and were willing to, find ways to support. It's not, you don't get everything you want, but can we get you this or can we get you part of that? And so we've been able to be creative and then also just find solutions. I think that's my big thing too, is just being solution oriented, and rather everybody in any program, there's programs with even way more money than we have that are looking around being but we don't have this, or this is a problem. And there's people with less, so everywhere you look, you can choose to look at what's not working, or you can choose to look at what you have and how do I get more of what I need, or how can I make this work? And that's kind of, I think, been our motto. That's my approach, because you get bogged down if you go the other way.
Now, here's the flip side of that conversation, and this is where I think if you haven't listened to the conversation with Kathleen Stengel, I encourage everyone to go do that for a million reasons.
Absolutely.
She's great and got a great inspiring story, but I think this is one of the really interesting tensions that we have here at Temple, specifically with where we are right now in college athletics. Is I think, and I'm sure you felt this when you came here for the first time in 2011, and you were rowing out of a tent and all, just
like a dream.
The mess that we were dealing with. But, and I'm sure you go back to when Kathleen was here, and they had even less.
Absolutely.
And they're running stairs in J&H and, all sorts of things.
Sharing one boat.
Yeah. But there is kind of a self-selection process where the people that come here to Temple specifically love that, and they carry that as a badge of honor. And we all know about Temple Tough. We all know about that the mindset and all of that. And it's interesting that has shifted in a way that I think is really good. We have those things that you've talked. We have academic support. We have mental health support. We have the nice things now, but it's hard to hold both here at Temple. And I'm just wondering how you kind of have, you still want tough kids that are willing to come in here and, do what it takes. And I think rowing in particular demands that as a sport. You have to have that. Have you felt that it's been more difficult, or when we talk about the changing nature of student athletes, because rowing is this kind of, you got to be a little unique and crazy to do it? Does it not show up for you quite as much? How do those things work, if that makes sense?
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. It makes a lot of sense, and it's that idea of to whom much is given, much is expected. And I think we have to work hard to create a culture where we're not just giving, but we're understanding that because there's an expectation that comes with your walking in the door and you're committing to this, and we're going to give you everything that we need. But I tell everybody, and I say this to recruits all the time, I think it starts with recruiting the right people and being really clear on your values as a staff and as a program. And so like I can't coach your desire. That has always been my thing. Like nobody can coach your desire. And so you could have all the athletic talent in the world. We could have all the, fanciest equipment or whatever we need, or just 12 boathouses. But if you don't want to show up and work hard, I refuse to drag people through this program. Like it works. It's too hard. It requires too much commitment. We need too much of each other. We rely too much on each other to be dragging people along. And so I would rather get to that no sooner and figure out that like this is not the place for you, or this is not the sport for you. Like let's get there. And I think as a coach I had to learn that to how to have, because I inherently want to believe that everyone can do this, and I'm willing to support anyone that wants to do it, but you have to genuinely want to do it. Like you don't have to be the best, but you have to genuinely want to be here. And if you don't, then that's the part that I struggle with. And so I think I learned as a coach, even in most recent years, like, being able to have conversations and hold up a mirror and really challenge people on that. Like, do you really want to be here? Or are you here because you just want to have a group of friends? Because you can do that in a club sport.
Right.
Like, this is a different experience. So I do think there's an element of rowing that kind of weeds that out, truly. But I think we also work very hard to actively create a culture where we're grateful for this opportunity, because it's an opportunity and a responsibility.
Yeah. I guess, because no one's showing up and seeing like a tarp covering,
Correct.
the one boat and saying like, oh yeah, this looks glamorous. I'm going to sign up for this. And now
yes.
if you walk into that boathouse, it's beautiful.
Absolutely.
Like, great.
And
I want to do this.
You know what else is in that boathouse is you walk into the locker room and the first thing you see is a picture of a tent. It's not in my I have a new office, speaking of things getting nice and new.
Yeah.
It's not on the wall yet, but it will be. And that's, I think, a piece of what we do is the very first practice that we're down there, we talk about to the team, and it helps having Kelsey here, who was an athlete at the time, and she rode out of a tent for 4 years, and she won conference medals.
Right. It didn't stop anyone from having
and one of
success.
her best friends and one of the best captains we've ever had in the team, she talks about coming to her official visit, stepping off the bus into that parking lot. We had literally at that point, I think, one tent because the men's tent was falling into the river. We were jammed into a tent on a trailer and a bunch of boat stands. And she was like, I walked into this glass-filled parking lot and I was like, these people are not messing around.
Yes.
Like, you're not here because of the luxury.
You're right.
This.
There's no
like,
amenities.
If you're here, you're here because you want to go hard and represent Temple to the best of your ability and do hard things together. She's like, that's the kind of program I want to be a part of. So I think we work hard to be like, that's the part of, that is the Kathleen Stengels of the world, and that her generation that started this program, and the women that, were here in 88 when we went to varsity, and like they're still here, and they come and they ride in the launch, and they are able to, any alum that comes, they talk to the athletes, and they kind of share, and not in a like like you have it so easy, but it's more like you have a responsibility, and like we have to carry this forward, and you're going to be judged by the women that came and did it with a whole lot less than you have. And so how do you take that responsibility seriously and carry it forward in a way that's honoring the people that came before? I think a lot of it is educating and teaching them what we had and what we didn't have, and that's never going to be an excuse. Like that, I think that's it eliminates the excuse. Like, you can't look at me and be like, we don't have enough to do the thing that's hard. It's like, we did the thing that's hard with a lot less. And so I think that is something that we hold on to, and we honor that as a program.
And I think that's where, Kathleen, and we've talked with Sharifa Howarth.
Absolutely.
I mean, you look at, they're winning A10 titles, and Temple Lacrosse is winning national championships on Kesey Field, which has got, turf that's harder than concrete and a chain link fence around it on, 15th and Norris. And, you can do it. You can do it. I'm wondering in the course of, and rowing is hard to judge. I mean, even you get to like what the Dad Veil, and, I know that we now have a points title, but, the old school rowing folks, the Dad Veil the champion is the varsity 8. Like it's just hard to quantify. It doesn't quite work the same in your sport. It's not quite as cut and dry as, basketball. There's a bracket. And, So I guess just along the way, there's accolades that stand out. You have, been in the American Conference, now moving to the MAC for rowing. So you have conference success, you have Dad Veil success, but sometimes depending on the year, you can't even compete in the Dad Veil because it's up against the conference championship, and you have all these things. Long-winded way of saying there's no easy, metric to just say like, hey, but are there some moments that as you, look back on this experience of being here at Temple to this point that, stand out as particularly gratifying?
Oh man, that's a great question. Yes. And it's funny, I sometimes forget. I think some of it is definitely tied to race results, but I do think a lot of it is like there's moments where I remember being we've had 3 different erg rooms since I've been here, and being in the erg room and getting the call, everyone's like, when is, like, we knew the boathouse was under construction. It was kind of like, when is it happening? And so then we found out in like in November, like, hey, you can move in tomorrow. And everyone was like, wait, what? And so we got a bus and we took the team down, and it was, I think, fall of 2016 or 17. And just like walking, we went from the tent and we were carrying boats across the parking lot to move into the boathouse. It was like empty racks and that was it. And I feel like that feels like a really key moment where you're like, wow, they were like looking out the windows and like, I can't believe this is ours. And so I feel like that feels like a success. You know, like I think for a lot of people, you're like, oh, like how many Dad Vale titles has it been, or how many conference championships? And we're in challenging situations. Like you said, we don't always have the same opportunities, but we're doing the best we can on the water. We've had some great success with like winning the women's points trophy in the overall in 2019 at Vales. We've medaled at conference championships numerous times. We're excited about what's coming in the MAC, but I think a lot of that success is stuff that happens away from the spotlight, or that other people aren't necessarily part of, like reinstating a program, and the amount of support that we had from women and men that came before, from around the country, from around the world, people that were supporting Temple rowing and felt connected to it and felt like they needed to back us up. And so I think like being part of something that's bigger than what's happening right now has always been something that's really cool. Or when alums come back and they're excited to share, or, you know, to be celebrating each other for accomplishments that are happening off the water as well. And then obviously big accomplishments, like, you know, when Gemma was racing at the Paralympics and we're all watching the boathouse together, like there's some amazing athletic accomplishments. And I think there's also a lot of smaller wins, again, that you don't always necessarily see, but I think those are the ones that keep you moving forward too.
Well, I know the primary purpose of doing this isn't necessarily to talk season, but we are sitting here at a pretty, you know, exciting time here as we're about to jump off and get into it. And it is a new era. You're moving to a new conference. And, you know, I think there's some excitement there. And so, you know, just kind of, and obviously, you know, just anyone that has listened to this conversation, you can hear the excitement, the passion that you have, and certainly that has not waned in the entirety of the time that you and I have worked together. I've felt that, you know, every time we get the chance to catch up and talk. So what excites you the most coming in here to 2026?
Oh my gosh. New conference you mentioned, I think that's a really exciting piece of it. Like, we worked hard when we knew the American was going to stop sponsoring women's rowing. We kind of saw it coming down the pike, and so we were talking with other coaches and other conferences, and my biggest goal was putting us in a position where we're going to be competitive and able to represent Temple at the highest level, which is at NCAA. So like it's going to be challenging, but it's a conference that we're really excited to get in and be, you know, racing teams that we see regularly. I think that's sometimes people don't realize that about rowing. Like, it all comes down to one conference. There's no regular season championship. There, you know, your regular season results matter. They sure do. But ultimately it's like 2K on the day, and we have 6 teams in the MAC. So there's one final. So we're doing all this training. This
is just for folks to know. This is Delaware, Eastern Michigan, High Point, UMass, Temple, Toledo. Correct. So those are your 6.
Yep.
I did not know that off the top of my head.
Impressed.
For the listener, I read it off my list here.
Right,
I had to make sure I got it right.
Yeah, some new faces.
But it's great because even though it is the MAC, and I mean, I think of that group, I guess the UMass is now in the MAC for all sports, but Toledo and Eastern Michigan are kind of your Midwest teams. But, you know, you've got Temple and Delaware in there, you know, so a great regional, you know, there's a nice little Northeast
Delaware, I think 3 times
pocket to it. And then, you know, High Point in there on the East Coast as well. So there is a nice, you know, geographic component to it as well. And you're right. I mean, 6 boats is it's perfect.
It's just great.
Straight to the grand final.
We're
and
excited.
Go.
Yes, one grand final, which means you got to be ready when that flag drops. So I am really excited at how, I think, you know, last year we didn't have a conference championship. We were kind of in a limbo year where other teams were finishing up. You know, UMass was last year in a different conference, and same with Delaware. And so now we're all together. And I think having that, like, tangible, like, there is a date circled on the calendar that's been circled since last year, you know, May 16th, and we're all going to be out there racing for our first MAC. Someone's going to be the inaugural MAC champion on May 16th, and someone's going to be representing their team at NCAA's potentially for the first time. And so I think that gets the team really excited. I've been really impressed with how they've leaned in. I think we've made some really great decisions as a program, as coaches, but also the athletes have responded to it and really bought in. We're fitter than we've been in a long time, thanks in part to the winter that we've had, but so is everybody else, right? But I think we're seeing just some really the way that they're taking care of each other and challenging each other, like it feels next level. And I've seen a lot of Temple teams come through here, right? But it just feels like it keeps building and building. So I'm really looking forward to getting out. 2 weeks. Next weekend we'll scrimmage, and then 2 weeks for the full-on opener.
Yeah, in a practical sense, we did have friends that were visiting from Georgia 2 weeks ago now, and we were going to the Please Touch Museum with the kids and driving past the Schuylkill, and I mean, it was still frozen solid then.
We were not sure. It's spring break now for us in the early March, but we weren't sure we were even going to be able to row this week. And so, normally Philadelphia, we've been rowing in January and February. Like there's times when we're out there.
We've had a string of fairly mild winters up until this one. Yeah.
And so I think there's always an element, and that's always a challenge. Again, going to school in New England, we had a longer winter, and you kind of settled in and you knew what you were up for. But here we don't have that, and so this was probably definitely the longest one in my tenure at Temple. But I think that to me is another sign of where the team is and how high performance they are, and that they leaned in so hard. I felt like every day they were kind of like, here's where we are, and we're going to use this as a chance to get better. And there was never a moment, you have the occasional workout here or there where you're like, man, the energy's a little low. But overall, the way they leaned in, and there was never any like big dip in the middle of winter. It just felt like every day they would come in and be like, how can we keep building? How can we keep building? And so that feels different and really exciting.
Yeah, because that's not easy.
No.
I mean, not to say, for most of us, like getting out on a river at 6 a.m. in January is a reward, but it's a hell of a lot better than being in an erg room. So, you'll take some fresh air and some scenery when you can get it. So, I mean, that really is
and it's
something.
We challenge them, right? That's our job as coaches, but I'm one of 50 people. Like I can't be responsible for the energy of 50 people. Right. So I think that we'd say that a lot, that they're responsible, and they've responded in a really big way and stepped up. So some really great leadership happening on all levels and really great decision making. And I think it's going to put us in a great spot when we start racing.
Awesome. Well, we are looking forward to finally having a nice spring, being able to celebrate, seeing you out there in and around the Northeast, and then heading to Eastern Michigan for the inaugural MAC championship and an exciting new year of Temple rowing. Thanks so much for your time. This is
Kevin.
great.
It's been really fun. Appreciate you. Go Owls.
All right, that's this week's episode of the Owl Pod. I want to thank my guest, Rebecca Grzybowski. A reminder, David Litvin and Amelia Wright are back on the Tuesday edition of the Owl Pod with an all-new episode. I'll be back with you right here next Friday. If you want to support the Owl Pod, please be sure to subscribe, leave a rating. Most of all, please tell your friends. You can listen on Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Spotify, Amazon, anywhere you get your podcasts, you can get the Owl Pod. And, of course, follow us on Instagram at the Owl Podcast. Special thanks to our entire Owl Pod team, especially our executive producer, Dan Lobaz. I'm Kevin Copp. Thank you so much for listening, everyone, and go Owls.